Hello.
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 Hello. Good evening, everyone, and good morning. Good afternoon for others. Okay, so probably we'll start in a few minutes. Let's give a few chance for others to join at least for another 2 minutes.
Anthony, just the link on the Meetup page gave me an error when I tried it. So I
Oh, so
amended the URL and then did it manually, just in case you see a drop in numbers. It might be a problem with that link.
okay. I'll check on that.
Or it might
Thanks
be
for that.
me.
Okay, so I think the others are watching on YouTube, and the rest are will just log in. So it's actually 7:30 evening in Manila. So probably others are still catching up for their dinner. So probably I could start the introduction so that we'll have more time in terms with our topic for today. So I'll start the introduction for the Ministry of Testing, Manila, Philippines. Okay, so I'm your host, so Anthony Schumal. So I'm the head of software quality for Cambridge University, specifically for academic. And I've been also being involved with other events like Startup Weekend and other volunteering events in terms of Manila. So for others who don't know, so Ministry of Testing is active present in 77 cities worldwide, and we believe that the more we get testers coming together, the better we chance at advancing our industry. And Ministry of Testing actually started in Cambridge, UK, and these are some of the Ministry of Testing meetups worldwide as well. So well, MOT Philippines just started last April 25 last year. It was actually held. Our first meetup is in Asian Institute of Management, one of the respected institution in Manila, Philippines. So we are also in social media, Facebook page as well. So before we continue, so we also have our next event. Now this is just a plugging for our next event after this. So we will have James Batch on June 11. We'll discuss about software exploratory testing. Then on the following week, after 2 weeks, we will have Lisa Crispin as well as discussing about the continuous delivery. So before we proceed, this is also another event on July. So we will have a workshop So we'll be trying to explore different ways in terms to grow this community. So we will have a free workshop training for those who's looking to start career in software testing or who wants to have some refresh. So we'll be inviting as well as mentors. So there will be also mentors from different parts of the world as well who have already committed um, taking part of this first Ministry of Testing Essentials for Manila. So for announcement, just visit our Facebook page. So before we start, I'd like to introduce our speaker. So Chris Armstrong. Actually, I met Chris during EuroStar 2019 in Prague. So Chris is a Huddle community director. So it was really exciting and fun to experience my first Euro testing conference. So they are very accommodating. It's our first international software conference in Europe. So it was really fun, and get to meet Chris and able to talk about in terms of the testing. So I also took an opportunity to to involve Chris in this community as well. And Chris currently is a test manager in EasyJet, and with 15 years experience in software testing. Probably Chris could elaborate later in terms of the credentials. But without further ado, I'd like to introduce Chris Armstrong for our first online meetup. Okay, so Chris, can you grab the? I'll actually stop sharing now.
Give it a go. Alrighty. There we go. Give me a thumbs up if you can see the screen.
Yes, we can see
Yes.
it.
Some good thumbs up. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. There's nothing more intimidating than talking to a bunch of tiles. So if you're brave, by all means, turn on your camera and I will wave and interact with you maybe a little bit more. Thanks, Julius. So thank you for that nice welcome, Anthony. Made me sound like I'm very important. So I like that. So here's the talk. Here we go. So I noticed in the invite from Anthony that he had a nice outline for what a heuristic was, in case you want to know a bit more. When we're talking heuristics, we're talking a method of learning or solving problems that allow people to discover things themselves or learn from their own experiences. What we're not talking about here is a very linear way of doing things. We're talking about ways of thinking, ways of approaching problems. Testers, we approach many problems all the time. So the contents of this talk for you, I'll do a brief introduction to myself and how we got to this talk, what the main chunk of the talk will be about, and also over to you. Before that, Anthony, could you circulate that link that I sent you? Could you add it to not only into the chat window, but could also someone get it onto the YouTube live stream? I like to be
Yes, I actually share it to the comments and
awesome.
meetup, and as well as
throw it in as many places as you can. Basically, what I want people to do is be quite interactive to start with. So I've got a handout. It's very, very basic Excel, because that's everyone's favorite test tool. So take some time as we go through this just to fill it out. It's basically 30 questions that will have 2 answers. I want you to pick your preference for those ones and then tally up your letters as we go along. There's no time pressure to do that immediately, but maybe if I'm rambling about something, you think I'll just complete this whilst Chris is talking, that would be really cool, because we'll have a bit of a chat as part of the Q&A at the end. So a little bit of an intro to me. As Anthony said, I'm a tester. I've been testing actually now for 16 years. We've rolled over to another year. I started off as a games tester. I tested some good games and I tested some very bad games. I moved into Cambridge University briefly, and then I worked for a company called Landis & Gear, who makes smart energy meters, and then a company called Pico Technology, who do oscilloscopes, data logging, vehicle diagnostics tools, and I was test and release manager there. And also now I'm a test manager in EasyJet. I like a bunch of different things, and it's important that you understand the context from which I come as well. I have a family, I have 2 lovely little children, and we found a shop with our name on it, so we thought we'd take a photograph. And England is, of course, always cold. So, like I said, context is important. So, this is me, this is what I do. I'm very involved in the test community. I highly, highly encourage you to get in touch with any Ministry of Testing. Meetups, you're obviously in this one now. Really get involved in the test community. It's a wonderful place. It's really supportive. I've spoken at conferences. I've just started a podcast. You will see this lovely thing here that I've started. I run the volunteer team for the EuroStar Conference as well. But actually, equally important to what I do as a tester is that I have a family. One of the people in this photograph might not be in my family, but I will let you decide. So, how do we get to this background? There's quite often a time in your life when you don't really know where you're going, what you're doing. I had a career crisis probably every 6 months when I was testing computers games. It was a very unstable place. It was during that time that I actually met my wife, and in doing so, we were encouraged before we got married to attend something called a pre-marriage course, and we were introduced to various topics and ways of thinking, a heuristic, if you will, to address things that maybe we hadn't considered before we moved into a commitment. You might be wondering where I'm going with this, but believe me, we're going somewhere. And so I'm going to now go on, but just before we start this next bit, I want you just to know that I'm not you and I'm not an expert in this field. These are my experiences. I am really enthusiastic about quality, and I love all conversations around it. Please feel free to engage. I'm very excited to share my experiences with you, and I hope that at the very least they make you think a little bit more about things. But if they help, I'm really pleased. I'm so keen to learn more. Any of your experiences, I'd love to share with you. But I'm also quite terrified. This is quite a scary thing to do, to share, to be humble, but also to stare at lots of empty tiles. If I keep on looking over to my side here, it's because that's where you all are. I'm going to wave at those of you that have turned on your cameras. Thank you very much. So what we're talking about here is a communication heuristic. So rather than just a way we approach our testing, this is the way we approach being testers and dealing with other people. So we could have talked about pragmatism, being political, being diplomatic. We could have talked about tools. We're on a nice, wonderful tool we have right now. I think with a lot of remote working, we're just spending a lot of time on these. Could have been talking about this stuff, this online communication. It's a lot different to face-to-face, isn't it? But really, right now, I'm most concerned with, as testers, how we approach our interpersonal communication. So the star of today's show is this book. There it is, it's on the screen as well. You don't need me to hold it. I'll just prove to you that I've actually read the book that I'm basing what I'm talking to you about. Dr. Gary Chapman is a New York Times bestseller. He's written a book about relationships. He started off with married relationships. He's moved on to relationships with children, if you're a parent, and how we approach those things. He breaks it down into 5 different languages. Just before I go into those bits, it's worth me sort of trying to tell you how we translate that. I think we can all sort of resonate with the idea that the world speaks different languages, and the people that we work with, especially in this international world that we are in, we speak different languages. And it may be that something that I say and I intend to go across will be interpreted differently depending on what your background is as far as languages are concerned. Now, Gary's broken this down into 5 love languages, and I will talk about how this can translate to our life as testers. So he has got words of affirmation, quality time, receiving gifts, acts of service, and physical touch. We'll move on nice and quickly. So, words of affirmation. Words are incredibly powerful things. The way we talk and interact with our colleagues can shape the way that we will work with them. And the same with the way they talk to us. They can set such an important milestone or bar for how we interact with them. Your first interactions with your colleagues can really change the way you think about them and want to work with them. So Gary breaks these down into several subsections. There is really no one size fits all onto all of these things. So under words of affirmation, we've got things like encouraging words. If any of you have ever had someone give you a compliment, I think you can probably agree, depending on context, that it was a good thing. But there are also times when people feel like they want the world to swallow them up. Have you ever had like an all hands meeting and somebody has singled you out for praise? Praise is a wonderful thing, but maybe your interpretation of that, that's not a good thing. Maybe a shout out in an email is something that you're really happy about. But the way we interpret good things that are said about us can be really different. If I'm given a compliment about something, I might think that's a nice thing, but my immediate reaction would be to sort of, I'm not going to accept it as a great thing. I'm not going to suddenly feel wonderful. But everybody is different, and that's why we need to have these conversations. Kind words is a really important thing. Imagine somebody's messed up. Maybe somebody added a bad bit of code. Maybe there was like a bit of a null pointer or something super exciting that we all enjoy. How do we react to that? How do we present a bug, an issue, something that somebody has done? If somebody comes up to you in a very aggressive, forward manner, I think your gut reaction is to step back and be very defensive, no matter what the situation is, and you won't feel good. So thinking about how we approach this, because we find defects all the time. It's not really our primary objective as testers, I hope, but it is something we do see a lot. We review code, we review documentation, we ask questions. Are we doing that in a kind way? There's an example that's given where there is an IT manager at my old place, and he had a problem with something that I had done. Actually, it wasn't me. I'll let you into a secret. It was my son. He took my laptop in a bag and he dropped it. What happened was there was a break to a hinge of a laptop. Not a good thing in the workplace. The IT manager, thinking the right thing to do was to ensure that he wasn't going to get accused of bullying and stuff, was to send a large email to the entire IT group and several of the managers to let them know that he was talking to me but not being a bully. And essentially, the first day I ever heard of this problem, because I didn't know my son had broken the laptop at this point because he's quite good at hiding things, was this huge email with a bunch of people CC'd into it. And I felt like I was being attacked, even though it was a small thing that a single one-to-one conversation could have resolved. Now, it took me probably a week, 2 weeks to probably not feel so offended to actually have a conversation. And I shared with him how I felt attacked by what he had done. And actually, from that point onwards, we had a much better relationship. He knew that I would rather just be approached personally, have a quiet word, and then we can try and resolve the situation that way. If we needed to bring other people in, that wasn't a problem. Kind words can help diffuse situations, even if there's conflict, which I think there's a lot of in the workplace. But the way we present those words, the tone that we use, whether we're throwing in sarcasm or banter, or are we being passive aggressive? There's so much of these things that's in our natural parlance every day. But those interpretations of the other people who are receiving these words can really matter. We need to understand how these things are being interpreted, because misunderstandings in communication damage relationships. They can damage the quality of our product and the way that we are working. So it's important to have empathy for our colleagues. It's important to seek understanding and reconciliation where we can. Humility is really important, especially, I believe, as testers, we are called to all be leaders, to set an example for quality, to be credible as testers. I think we have to seek to do things the way we want them to be done. So if we believe that we should hold our work at the highest standard, we should be doing those things and seeking for people to give us reviews for our work. Whenever I write a blog post or some documentation, I ask people to be explicitly and as harshly as they'd like, presenting me as much feedback as they can. Russell, who's in this call right now, he's already heard my talk twice. He's given me honest feedback every time, and God bless him for that. I want people to be honest and forthright with their feedback to me. But that is because I know that everything that I'm saying and everything that I'm doing isn't going to be perfect, and nor should it be. As leaders, we should be people who are held to account for what we're doing, and we should never believe that we are wholeheartedly the only experts. We should always seek information. We should always seek feedback from others, just as much as we should give it when it's requested, or if we feel that it really has to come forward. But with the way we display that should come from a place of humility. As a junior tester, I was often spoken down to by the people who were very much more expert than myself. We used a lot of Microsoft Excel, and at the time I didn't know how to do some of those beautiful formulas and all the different colors. It was very exciting for those people to tell me how silly and stupid I was for not knowing how to do those things. That didn't come across well. So moving on to quality time. Focused attention. Has anyone ever been in a meeting, you can show me with some nice thumbs up, where there's been this situation where we have seen people attending a meeting that I'm in, that you're in, and they are looking at their laptop, they're typing away. Maybe they're on their phone. Maybe it looks like in no possible way are they actually paying attention to what I am saying. Yes, there's a few thumbs up. My goodness, is that annoying. I've had meetings where I've done proof of concepts to try and get buy-in for a new test automation framework. And I'd say about 80% of the people in the meeting were on their laptops typing away the whole time. We had a physical demo. It was a hardware rig linked with some software, and there was just no one looking at me. The whole demo was a complete flop. The thing didn't work. They still signed off on it, so I guess they appreciated the effort, but it felt like I'd wasted so much time and effort. And this happens time and time again. We have to be conscious of doing this ourselves. I get a ping on my phone. I get it on my watch. I want to read that thing straight away. I have trouble with that at home when we're having dinner with the family. I have trouble with that when I'm working. There might be a conversation and a little Slack notification pops up. You have to be conscious. If you are talking to somebody and they have come to you about something, you should give them your attention. It's about respect, but it's also about, it's setting a precedent, because they might never bother coming to you again. You clearly come across as somebody who doesn't care. Why would I bother coming back? If you want to be involved in things, which as testers we really do, then we really need to make sure that we're holding ourselves to account and not doing these things that irritate us. Quality conversation is really important as well. Understanding people that we work with that are actually humans. We have lives. I know people don't like to share parts of their lives sometimes in the workplace, and that's fine. But still finding a way that we can engage with people beyond just ticket 2409 is really important. It can be something simple, like somebody likes a particular brand of coffee. Suddenly you might have something that you can resonate with. You've got a little link between them. Or you can see that somebody gets irritated by something, say the previous point, you know, somebody always gets their phone out and you can see someone else in your meetings always gets irritated. Maybe they're cut off. If you can understand what actually grinds people's gears, what winds people down, or things that they really like, you're showing that you can understand them. You've picked up just a little piece of them. And this is a two-way thing. You have to give a piece of yourself up as well. But that's how we build relationships and have a good conversation. It should never be a one-way street. It shouldn't just be you declaring everything that you need or getting to know people that way, because they're actually just getting to know you and probably they're a bit irritated. So having a sympathetic dialogue, sharing your experiences, sharing any thoughts and feelings about things. Maybe there's like a go, no go decision going on a release and you've got something that you're really not comfortable about. Maybe it's just like a UX defect. Maybe you've got worries about the performance. I don't know. But if you've got something that you're not happy about, you should be able to share those things and people should be able to find those tells. The people that you work with are your team. It's important. And also the other thing is, following on for the last point, is a quality conversation is one that isn't being interrupted. So again, you know, it might be you're talking to somebody and then, you know, what's it, the dog in the movie Up, he just sees a squirrel and runs off. His distraction goes. Actually, engaging with people. I often talk to my son and say, if I'm having to tell him off, right, he's a small child, but I ask for eye contact. It's important to know that you're engaging with people and that you're not being uninterrupted. It's nothing more irritating than talking to somebody and they just start getting a car and just driving it along. It's not a car, but you know what I mean. So learning to talk. When we talk about this, I think we can all talk. But what I mean by this, it is revealing yourself. It is letting people know that there are things that you like and don't like. I had a colleague who had a real issue with somebody else who always would come around, just touch their shoulder. Now, it was innocent. The other person meant nothing about it. It was just trying to be engaging. But she could not stand it. She let us know that things like it would make her skin crawl. And in that sense, he had no idea. There were no ill intentions, but he didn't know this was happening. It was possibly a subconscious thing. But because I knew about this, I was able to intervene on her behalf and just say, you know, this is something that you probably shouldn't do in the workplace. You don't know what this person feels like. There might be a background that we're not aware of. And because I understood what she was stressed about, I was able to help that situation. For me, there was a situation in my workplace when I was in games where the test lead and the senior had a big, long conversation, having a go at church ministers, talking about how terrible they were as people. My father was a church minister. So you can imagine I'm sitting there listening to this conversation, people having just banter, and maybe they were being quite calm about it. You know, there was no malice or ill thought about it, but they didn't understand my context. They didn't understand about me that what they were saying could be really offensive. And some of that is on me. I did not take the time to let them know. But my lead and my senior didn't know me. They didn't ask those things about me. And so it is a two-way thing. But if people don't know because you haven't told them, then you've got a bit of dysfunction there already. And it's really important that we're not just offending people. And if we have got problems, that we've got the safe space, the people that we can share with when we have something that's wrong with us. Because suffering in silence, it's not a good thing. And you know what? If you're the person that does something that hurts other people, it feels absolutely terrible. Dead Seas and Babbling Brooks. Has anyone ever had a one-to-one meeting? We'll do a show of thumbs again, where they just talk the whole time. They're just complaining. They need a vent. They need to rant. Yes. That relationship with somebody is what we would call a babbling brook and a Dead Sea. It is a one-way relationship. The Dead Sea is a body of water where water runs into it and it goes nowhere. that sort of thing where you're just taking in negativity the whole time, that can bubble up and lead to things like burnout or despondency or complacency or just giving up. A babbling brook can also lead to those bits. That's something that just runs the whole time, just gets nothing back. You can run as an empty battery on that one. That's what this terrible GIF is all about. A healthy relationship has a bit of both. You take, you receive, not all at the same time, doesn't have to be equal. Certainly in a one-to-one relationship, say it's with your line manager, your lead, or somebody who's mentoring you, it shouldn't be equal, but there should still be some give and take. That is what a healthy relationship looks like. And burnout is real, and we really need to ensure we don't encourage it and we look out for it for each other. When we talk about quality activities, we're talking about things that we do together. Do you have team building in your workplace? Do you ever feel like it's forced? Or do you have good examples of team building, things that you do together? This is my old team doing our very first ever test mob. And do you know what? We actually have a lot of fun, which is a great thing. We also were very serious in a photo booth to celebrate being a good place to work. And we had lots of testing meetings. You'll notice I provide a lot of food in my meetings. Food is sociable. Doing things together, sharing, pairing, mobbing, doing things that we actually enjoy. Maybe it's playing table football at lunchtime or table tennis, or in these times now, maybe there's meetups that we do, quizzes, I don't know, things where we just drop in, have a virtual coffee or whatever. Those things together enable us to actually store a positive memory bank of times that we had together. If we can relate our relationships with people to positive things, that's building a quality relationship. And like I said, doing software development is all about people first before technology. The technology will come, but if our relationships are broken, we're not going to do such a good job. Receiving of gifts. Do you have Secret Santa in the Philippines? Do you understand the concept? Or am I completely missing the mark?
Yes.
Yeah, so in my workplace, for sure, it was, we randomly drew someone out and we bought everyone a gift. It was secret. So it was from Santa. I've been bought some terrible presents. I think I got a World Wrestling Entertainment wrestling belt that I got to build myself last year. But, do you know, gift giving isn't just about Christmas. It's a reminder of love. And when we say love in the workplace, we're not talking about the same thing as at home. Not most of the time. Does anybody recognize this picture? Russell knows the answer already, so I don't want to ask him. But does anyone know where this is from? Show me a thumbs up or shout out. Oh, Sharon knows. Do you know? Can you turn your mic on and tell us?
Home Alone.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, I like you. I like you so much.
I don't want to mention because it will be age perspective.
So
Anyway.
Yeah. This is from Home Alone 2, Lost in New York. What happens in this part in the movie is Kevin has just solved a robbery. He's stopped it taking place of the big, lovely toy store in New York. And the shop owner tells him that he can take any gift from the store as a thank you. And Kevin asks for some advice. And the shop owner says, take the turtle doves, because there are two. You give one to somebody that you love, and you keep one for yourself. That way, when you look at it, you've got a reminder of love. The same is true of things like a wedding ring or a gift that you've given somebody, be it some jewelry or a nice thing. Maybe you bought them a nice t-shirt or anything really. And in the workplace, those things are true as well. It might be that somebody worked really hard to establish a new process. They fought for you to be able to enable you to have a big training budget, get you a Ministry of Testing Pro account in the workplace. Those things that people have fought for in order to give you what you need because they care, they appreciate you, and they want you to grow. When we talk about best investment, we're talking about how you spend your time, your resource, and your skills. In the workplace, 9 to 5 isn't always just what we do. Sometimes we work beyond those things. But if you are someone who is never available because you've filled your time with all your own work and you're only going to choose your time on your stuff, if somebody asks you for help, you're too busy. If somebody asks to use your machine, you're not using it, but you might, and you're not going to share those things. Those will give a negative response to people. I'm not saying to everybody, share the world. But there are things that we can do that will set an example for what we would like, we would appreciate. It is a reflection of love in the workplace, if you like, how we appreciate people. It is a sharing world. If you're working in an agile environment, you're wholly encouraged to work in a collaborative way. And so therefore, we need to know when people are available. We need to know when resources are available. If somebody has a particular skill or knowledge base, we need to know that we can get that from them. Now that can be in the way, maybe they spend a lot of time in writing a document or preparing training, or to just say, give me a shout anytime and I will help you. I was a Jira admin in my last workplace. It's maybe nothing to celebrate, but I thought I'd just tell you and share my pain. But what that meant was anyone in the entire company, if they had any problem, if say Atlassian decided just to change the UI and maybe remove something like the ability to print, that was a real life example that happened. I had to be on hand at any point to drop everything that I was doing to help. Otherwise, I was a pretty useless champion. I wasn't able to help people and they would be blocked. Testers, I think we've all been seen to be a bottleneck at times, and I think our goal is to not ever be a bottleneck because we want to share quality, share our passion with others. The words on the screen are just because I think testers should be these. They're not really relevant. I just was looking for something to fill the screen. And then there's the gift of self. Being present with people can be so appreciated sometimes. I wrote a blog post about things that I expect of myself as a leader. And one of those things is availability and being present with people. There's nothing worse than not fulfilling an obligation or turning up for a meeting but not contributing. I'm just there because I think I'm supposed to be. Or say I'm sent something for review, just don't bother, I haven't got time. Or I write, looks good to me on a little pull request or something. So when we talk about this in terms of agile, there is a minimum viable product that we should set ourselves as a team for how available we are and how much of ourselves we are ready to give. Maybe it is we should have an hour a day aside in case somebody needs to be used, to be flexible, to jump on something, to help, to pair, any of those ideas. That can be a conversation that you can have within your team. An unavailable leader, an unavailable tester isn't a particularly helpful person. Katrina's doing something interesting. Nice. I just muted her. Moving on swiftly, that was smooth. Acts of service. Are you somebody that takes people for granted? Or are you somebody that feels like you're being taken for granted? I think sometimes as testers, if we're running through, we're just executing tests all the time, we haven't got time to stop and just think or breathe or look at the bigger picture sometimes because the test queue is so full or whatever. That's not a good situation to be. Having an attitude of being selfless in the workplace is really really a good way to be. Being selfish isn't such a great thing. We should always be a little bit selfish, right? I guess I've just contradicted myself quite impressively. But what I mean is nobody should ever feel they're being taken advantage of. No one should ever be taken for granted. You shouldn't take somebody for granted. You should celebrate those people, even if they're doing something and don't want the thanks for it. And people do appreciate these things. People do just like to do things to show that they like you or they appreciate you, and they don't want that praise. But having a conversation about recognizing that they have done that, even if that's all they would like, can be important. It can be sacrificial, but it is a show of love and respect. But how would you be satisfied if you were still doing stuff for people and they didn't even notice? Maybe there's someone you've worked with who just used to do little things in the background. Maybe they tidied up your desks at the end of the day. Maybe they turned off the plugs to save energy. Maybe, they would go on holiday and they'd bring you back a little bit of food, and then they're gone and you don't have it. Maybe those are the things where when someone's not there anymore, you actually finally realize all the work that they did. And I think we can all probably think of an example of that. So this is the disclaimer. Physical touch in the workplace, if we ever make it back into the workplace, we need to be talking not what's not safe for work. I'm not encouraging that. I'm talking about what is safe for work. I gave this talk in front of my old company. HR were present. I was very careful. I was very sure to make sure I wasn't telling everybody to go around and hug everybody. For me, I am quite a sort of a physically animated person, and I do appreciate with some people that I would like to have a hug, but not everybody. And it's important that we know the limits that people have. I especially enjoy a high five. In almost every workplace I've ever had, we've been expected on our birthdays to bring in treats to share with the office. It's my birthday. What am I going to get for it? So I would send this exact GIF and say, you want my treats? You give me a high five. Now, right now, we can't do those things, but there will be a lot of people who, for them, physical touch is actually one of their primary love languages, and they are missing out right now, and they're probably struggling. Life in lockdown will be hard for everybody. And I sent a tweet out a couple of weeks ago asking how the extroverts of the world were doing without being able to go out and interact with people. I miss having the relationships where I could high five people and shoot the guns and get a hug from my friends. I haven't had that for such a long time. I'm missing it. And then a friend of mine who is an extrovert said he's in a situation where he doesn't like cuddles. He's an extrovert, but his family, well, they're introverts and they love cuddles. So actually, even that little example, that tweet that I just put out just to sort of see how everyone was doing, it challenged me again that even my perceptions on life, just my context, isn't relevant to everybody else. People are struggling in different ways and missing out on different things. So that's just a brief overview of all of these things, these love languages. Hopefully, everyone has had a chance to go over the handout that I sent. Have we got some good thumbs up for that? Have we got some tallied up points? Those people on YouTube who can't give me a thumbs up, I'm going to just assume you've done it because, that's good. So we should be able to go straight on to a bit of a conversation. What are your love languages? Typically, what Gary said in his book is most people will have come from maybe they've had two parents who spoke a different love language to each other. Maybe one of them was a parent who was really into acts of service, and another one that was really into words of affirmation. Those two have had to learn how to speak each other's love languages in order for that relationship to work. And in the workplace, we will have been shaped by our experiences with other people, but we will still interpret things differently to each other. So if you've tallied up your scores, you should see 2 on average that will have you'll have a much larger number than the others. I actually have 3 to prove that we are all edge cases, perhaps, but by show of a thumb, again, let's use these thumbs. Who had A as one of their primary love languages? Words of affirmation. Let's be interactive. Nice. So I had words of affirmation, and I had quality time, and I had acts of service as mine. But words of affirmation, as I touched on earlier, is a different thing. So if people are happy to unmute themselves, I would like to sort of engage in a bit of a conversation, and maybe people could just shout out and say what's their best case example of how they would like someone to tell them they've done a good job and they're appreciated. Who's going to be brave? Go on, Anthony. You can turn yours on.
Chris, you're on mute.
How about now?
Now you're not.
Perfect. Was Anthony playing games with me? So I had a conversation with a friend of mine before I proposed to my wife about something that was going to be a wonderful thing. Asking somebody to marry you is such a lovely thing. And this falls into the words of affirmation thing. There's nothing more my wife wanted to hear than me to ask her to marry me. But my idea was to do it in a public place, a grand, wonderful place. I had this great plan to go to Copenhagen, to get down on one knee in the Tivoli Gardens at Christmas time and have a friend film it all. But the friend of mine said, you know, your wife, she will kill you. She would want that. She'd want the earth to swallow her up, because that sort of word of affirmation in that context was the complete antithesis of what she appreciated. She wanted a quiet thing that wasn't going to put her in this place where she didn't like it. I mean, the whole act of getting married in public is quite intimidating for a lot of people, but they still want to have that moment of love. And we can translate that into the workplace. You know, some people really don't want to have a big public shout out, and some people do. Has anyone got an example of where they've had a situation like this? It can be in the workplace, it cannot. Let's hope I don't get muted again. Lou has written something. The thing with words of affirmation, it comes naturally, especially in Filipino company. Don't enjoy pointing out faults, but we're very generous with good words. This is very much evident in the team huddles. We share appreciation to the best performance for a certain period. Well, I mean, again, this is important, because when we're talking about words of affirmation, we're also, if we only ever build people up, though, do those words become hollow? Are they targeted, or does that actually help? I don't understand different contexts, but if I always heard from the same person, you've done a good job no matter what I'd done, I'd start to lack belief in the credibility of what they were saying. So who had quality time as a show of thumbs? There we go. Have you ever had an example where somebody hasn't been paying attention to you in a meeting, or they've come late to a meeting, or they just, you know, they never seem to be available? Maybe you've had someone you need the time of, and they're just never there. Or you go, oh, can I just grab your time? And they say, oh, not now. Find a time on my calendar or whatever. You put something in the calendar. They're never there.
That's happened on my end. Been there, done that.
How does it make you feel, Julius?
So whenever I host meetings, I am a developer, by the way. So, but trying to shift to testing. So whenever I start a meeting with with a group of people, for example, exploring tools like RabbitMQ, Elasticsearch, and whatever technologies out there that we've been using, you will suddenly recognize it that they're no longer interested when they're already playing with their phones, checking emails, and so on. And you will just find out whenever you ask questions like just checking out, for example, do you have any questions so far?
Mm.
You will just receive usually none so far, which is
Yeah.
I've been doing it as well. Maybe it's a bit of a karma, but yeah.
Yeah.
But so you will recognize that point that maybe they're just getting bored at that part of your slides.
Mm.
You just have to in my experience, I just have the need to interact, share
Yeah.
ideas, and exchange questions with answers and follow-up questions. That makes time a quality. That makes me my love language quality time. I recognize it's not I'm wasting their time or not when in such an examples meetings.
Do you find in remote meetings that we're having these days, a lot of people aren't activating their cameras? I don't think necessarily in an all hands a big meeting that having everyone's camera active is particularly productive. But when you have smaller meetings like stand-ups or planning meetings where there's maybe only 5 or 6 of you, if there's always somebody that isn't activating their camera and everyone else is there a reason behind that? Is there trouble with engaging? Have they not got the equipment that they need to be able to do those things? Or maybe there's also an accessibility question with regards to their place of work whilst they're working remotely. I have a nice big box of chairs. I've got a nice chair. I've got a couple of boxes of books. I haven't got a bookshelf to look all professional behind me just yet.
Yeah.
I can understand why people maybe would be, I don't know, worried or embarrassed about where they're seated.
Yeah.
But that conversation might just be that we can't fully engage with people if we're not having those moments. And maybe we need to make people feel comfortable. Like Anthony's got a lovely background. I'm assuming he's not actually outside above a city at night time. Maybe I'm wrong. But those, I mean, to their tools, Teams and Zoom, they allow you to do these things these days. Maybe that's a way around it. Well, I'm conscious of time, but has anyone got C as their love language? Receiving gifts. It's not really mine, but my sister is someone that is very keen. She just, if someone's feeling down, she'll ping them a little gift because she knows a little bit about them, and she'll just send it to them. I was feeling a bit down at the beginning of lockdown. She sent me a whole bunch of chocolate. The woman knows me well. I was very appreciative of it. It's a little lift, and she wanted nothing back from it. She just cared, and that sort of thing's really important. We've got Lou's written a comment regarding focus and meetings. Goldfish has a longer memory attention span than humans. They've got 9 seconds, ours is 8. Well, I think my children's about 2 seconds. Acts of service. So does anyone feel like they're ever taken advantage of, or do they think they've got an example where they might have taken advantage of someone in the workplace? Or maybe they haven't known to start with, but then maybe they've gone away and you've noticed. It's very quiet. We had a guy in my old workplace who, over a weekend, he was a key holder for the office. He came in and he bought a Christmas advent calendar that he hung up in every single team's area, so that when they came in on the Monday, each team had some sort of chocolate to share in their zone. He did it anonymously. He just did it because he loved the people he worked with and wanted to give them something nice that sort of promote a bit of a lovely Christmas spirit with everybody. And if he wasn't there, we wouldn't know that we'd missed out on it. But actually, those little things, he was doing those things because he loved us, and it wasn't just that. That's a gift one, but also it was acts of service. He gave up his time to help people. I had a break on my phone screen. He was happy to give up his time to replace that for me. I didn't even ask him. He just offered. People like that are wonderful people, but we need to celebrate them in a way that they actually appreciate. It might be someone that gives up their time to fix an issue in their pipeline. I managed to break our testing peers blog site the other week. There was a typo in something that I'd written, and Russell over here, I sent him several messages and said, I've just managed to delete the link to the actual podcast, so people can't listen to it anymore. I'm sorry, help. He logged straight back in, he fixed it. He didn't need to do that straight away, but he gave up a bit of himself for those things, and I really appreciate that. Did anyone have E as a love language as far as the workplace is concerned? No, a lot of engineers don't. There's a whole run of memes about people hugging engineers and how inappropriate those sorts of things are. But understanding if there are people like that, I had a colleague who had a T-shirt that said hugs right here. Yeah, he was inviting people to come to him. You don't wear a T-shirt like that if you're not asking for hugs. So it's important to think of those people. That form I gave out to you is my interpretation of what Gary Chapman has written for relationships. If you ever wanted to do one, I recommend looking at the book. There is a whole variety of online quizzes for interpersonal relationships as far as children and relationships as couples or as single people are concerned as well. You're very welcome to circulate the one that I did for the workplace. I would readily invite you to engage with me, chat beyond this. Please check out my blog. Please check out the Testing Peers podcast. We have one episode out so far. There will be a new one soon. Please follow on Twitter, LinkedIn. Please carry on the conversations. I understand this has been a bit of a whistle-stop tour about love languages, but it's so applicable to us in our context as testers, not just testers, but people who work in agile and development environments. Anthony, questions, anything like that?
Yeah. So does anyone have a question? Though I have actually some. It was a really good topic because a lot of us always think about the technicalities in terms of how we communicate.
Yeah.
In terms of sometimes we've been. I mean, when we are at the meeting, I think most of us are preparing for what we wanted to say rather than what we wanted to hear, or sometimes we become defensive if there are things that is not working. So most of the thinking that we have is what is my defense, okay, which is, I think that is a useful situation for a developers and a QA. So sometimes we have to value in terms of how we're going to communicate with them. And I think this is a very useful to start this online meetup, to take everyone to step back in terms of how we wanted to communicate. And there are really times that it's not really about the technicalities or the knowledge, but it is actually your love or how you communicate things were actually more value to other people. And putting more empathy, I think that's what the world needs right now in terms of understanding. This is actually a very good because since we are in Manila, Philippines, so we have somewhat different culture, and I've been also working remotely with UK counterparts as well.
Yeah.
So well, if I'll start the first question while others are still thinking. So how do you have any experience in terms of how you communicate this remotely? It could be in a different country, or it could be UK is a very big country. So how would you? For probably there could be also different culture on each region. So how you've been working on this as well?
So I started my current job remotely. I had one day in the office and I met no one. And so I've had to learn, because I was a primary subscriber to interpersonal face-to-face interactions with people. That is how I build relationships with people. I can read them. I can see some people pull a face, when they're not happy and they can't fight it, and you can tell that. But doing those things remotely is slower, and it has to be very different. I've taken to filling up a big notebook of conversations. I've literally filled it when I've chatted to people, writing down anything. I've got a bunch of questions I've had just to get to know people. I've asked a little bit about them as far as their relationships, with who they work with, who else they think I should interact with. I've been having sort of virtual coffees with a lot of people because I can't just start ground running. I don't know the technology. I don't know the ways of working. I don't understand the context of why things are as they are now. And we have an international team. And you're right, people do interact differently. But you can still find things in common with other people. I have a friend whose wife is from the Philippines. So when I would talk to Anthony, I'd say, got a friend whose wife's from the Philippines. You know, that could be a conversation starter. I went to school with a girl who came from the Philippines, and she taught me one word in Tagalog. I don't remember it anymore, but I learned something at the time. And having just a little interaction with that, it could be a seed that can grow into a relationship. Sometimes it'll flourish, sometimes it won't. But if I don't have these people to talk to, I'm going to learn nothing, because documentation is only useful for a short space of time before it comes out of date. So unless we've got a wonderful living documentation culture in the workplace, we need to have the tools and the ability and the availability to interact with people. There is a question in the chat. Russell asked if there are any books I'd recommend on reading. Beyond this book, I haven't read books on the subject. However, there are a few people who are really strong in the testing community whose blogs I would recommend and webinars. I would, my first port of call with these things would be to go to Rob Lambert. He runs communication workshops. He did a communication workshop at the EuroStar Conference that Anthony, Russell and myself and Incan, who's on this call at least was, all went to. So I would heartily recommend you look up Rob Lambert. As and when I find things, I will tweet them or I will put them on my blog. So follow me, that's not a problem. We've got a question from, Michelle has said she's leading a big QA team consisting of 16 leads, and merely they have 3 downs, but we've not been able to build these questions. It is slow, and if you want to talk more about these things, reach out to me afterwards and we can talk about these things, because it is all based on context. There's no one size fits all for these things. Jason said being aware of these aspects are vital in communication, more so as testers working across functional teams. I think it can just be as testers, but I think it can be anyone. It could be a Scrum Master, a BA. Building these relationships is important no matter what our specialism is. Michelle says it's challenging to build this since, yes, our team is quite big, but I want to target this. Any advice? I think the biggest advice I can have, especially right now, is to find allies in the workplace. People who see the world in the way that you do. So that will require you being honest about what you want to achieve or the way you see the world, or maybe you've observed something and you're not happy with it, or something that you do like. And just talking to people about that, you will find people that you will resonate with. Having an ally in the workplace, someone that's more established in the workplace who maybe knows a few things, is important. But like I said, when you're communicating with people, finding out who other people are sort of in a sort of organic way is much better than just having a series of sort of forced coffee times or induction meetings and stuff. I'm talking about when you start, but even if you're in an established team, there might well be people that you've never had to interact with, but actually their knowledge, their know-how, the way the company works can be really important in understanding how the company that we work in is put together and what the product we're trying to work on is meant to be like, who it's targeting, what our goals and aims are for that. The conversations we have with our stakeholders and colleagues are really important. I don't know if that was useful advice or not. I just said a lot. Sharon has a follow-up question. Do you want to speak, Sharon?
Hi. Follow-up question from what Anthony asked earlier, and what you have already mentioned. Since this lockdown seems to be like limiting our relationship with other engineers, so it's difficult for us to establish relationships with our co-workers, especially now that most of our interactions are just chats, email correspondence. So I'm wondering how important is it to, for example, using Zoom to be able to see everyone, to chat. I'm not sure if that will be more effective.
Yeah, I mean, again, it depends on the people with whom you're working, but I've found sometimes I've gone a little bit crazy being by myself, and even if I haven't needed to build a relationship with people at the time, we've had a shared call where we've all had our video on, we've all had our audio on, our mics on, everything, and we've just sat and worked. Just I miss the noise of keyboards. And maybe I've just seen something or something makes me laugh. You know when you're in an office and somebody might laugh because they've seen something funny, and then that you can all huddle around their desk. Even like little bits like that, that sort of environment becomes less forced because you're all just doing your job. I mean, it helps if you have multiple screens, but that certainly it felt a bit more natural to me. But also, I would encourage things like pairing. If you get the opportunity to do that. Mob sessions are really useful as well, facilitating them remotely as possible. And also, it's important to remember, like in the workplace, we might well have a coffee break and we might just bump into random people. My old workplace, when lockdown started, they started a channel on the company intranet that was just called the Virtual Kitchen. And people, when they went to make a coffee, would just say, "Oh, hi, I'm just making a coffee. Isn't the weather nice? Just taking my dog for a walk." Just sort of normal things to make us sort of feel like this lockdown isn't so isolating. It can just help little conversations. I don't know if that's helpful or not, but it's kind of just trying different things and seeing what works.
Thank you.
Lou has said 5 dysfunctions of a team. It talks about different personalities in the office. It also discussed something about people who keeps using the laptop in the meeting. Is that a different book, or is that just a take on what we've just been talking about? Book suggestion. Awesome, thank you. I will look it up. I've been asked to see what it says on my T-shirt about production. Right, I got this from a conference as well. It says, here you can see it. There we go. What do we say to production issues? Not today. It's from a performance testing tool called Octoperf, and I'll get in touch with Quentin Helmard and tell him to give me some sponsorship money for that. Yes, testing T-shirts, they're very important to wear as much as possible. Let's promote how important testing is. Do we have anything else? Incan says, my team has a Hangouts especially dedicated to being a water cooler chat, which is nice. That is nice, and that's kind of the same sort of thing I was talking about. It's just nice to be a bit human. My old work, I keep on talking about that because they feel more relevant to this at the moment. They have a nighttime Hangout open that's called The Locked In. Nice little play on words for a pretend pub, and people can just turn up with their drinks and just have a bit of a chat about life, and hopefully not just do work talk every once in a while. Any more?
Any more question? I think we are somehow over time for 9 minutes.
Looks good now. Looks good, I guess.
Okay. Yeah, please feel free to get in touch. Like I said, follow me on Twitter or find me on LinkedIn. I think Anthony's got the link to that on the invite. Do take a look at my blog, and please listen to our podcast. We're only just starting, but we're hoping we're four guys just hoping to chat a bit about testing, quality, leadership, and hopefully it'll be something different and interesting to you.
Okay, thank you, Chris, for this opportunity. For the effort in terms of sharing your knowledge to the Ministry of Testing, Manila, Philippines. And thank you everyone as well for sharing your night to us, your dinner for sure you've been working from home, okay, and straight to this meetup. And give us feedback in terms of how we could improve. This is our first online meetup, so there could be some issues, problem, so that we could as well as help us to improve our next meetup. So we still have two meetups coming as well. And thanks everyone. Thanks Chris. Thanks to everyone who have attended.
Thank you, everyone.
And I think this is a very good discussion about putting more empathy, putting more communication in terms of the work, especially on this global pandemic. I think everyone needs to reflect in terms of how we're going to able to communicate further with our teams, with our managers, with our organization in terms of how can we provide more value and create more impact as well. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye bye.